Sweet. So now that we have all the cells in a row, right? All the cells in a row, a collection of cells in a single row. What do we need to do? We need to loop through them and check to see what is it that they contain so that we know what we can use, right? And if the text in the cell is equal to our desired column header, which in this case is a salary, then we're going to store that in the column index, right? So it's going to be either index 1, 2, or 3, and we're storing that in the column index. However, if the cell text contains our desired value, which is software development engineer in test, we find the salary locator, get the salary, and then write it out using the console. All right, so I can see I talked a lot, and you guys probably want me to start running through the code so we can better understand it. Not a problem. Let me go ahead and put a breakpoint right here and start debugging the sucker. So again, while it's pulling up the browser, just remember the point, right? We got the table. Inside of the table, we have the rows. So we grab the collection of rows. Inside of the rows, we have cells that live. So we just need to run through every single row and through every single cell and get the values that we want. If the cell has a value of salary, then we want to know where that column lives. If the row has a value of software development engineer and test, then we want to use the column of the salary and the row of this text to get this value. You guys, hopefully, I hope you get it. All right, so for every single row in our collection of rows, right, we have 4. So I'm gonna step into this. Now, our collection of rows is 4, but if I use tr, right, it's 0. You guys see that here? Tr from 0 to collection of rows.count. So when I step into this, what's going to happen is now this row only represents the very first row. And it's going to keep changing, right? With every iteration, this row is going to be the one that we're analyzing. So now that we have this row, let's get all of the cells in that row. And each of these rows has 3 cells. 1, 2, 3. Let's check it out. All cells in a row. And we got 1, which isn't right. Let me scroll back up. Add a period here. I think that was why. I think you did need the period. Step over this again. There you go. Now we got 3. So that was my mistake. You need the period to get all of the cells in a row. Okay? So now we have 3, right? Because in this row, very first one, and actually let me select that right one so that you guys know what we're talking about here. There you go. This is the one we're talking about right now. We have 3 cells. Fantastic. Now we need to go through every single cell and check them for their values. So for each cell in our collection, let's step in. This cell right now, if we look at it, is going to be the very first one, right? And that contains title. But what we care about is that the cell.text is equal to our desired column header, which in our case we want salary, right? So cell.text, see that right now it's title because we're looking at this cell right here, is equal to our salary. And in this case it's not, so the column index, which is just another variable, this column index will not be stored. It's -1 right now. So it's going to throw us problems if we try to use it. So I'm going to step over this. That's not going to be the case. And now, also, if the cell.text is equal to our desired value, which is software development engineer and test, we need to process it. But you guys can see that it's not, so we're not going to be processing it. So let's step over this. Column counter increases. Column counter is just the counter of the column that you are at. So we started with 1 because we were in the first column. Now we're going to go to the second column. And every time this loop increments, we're going to increase it. So we increase the column counter. And now we move on to the next cell. So now we're in our next cell. Let's step through this, and actually gonna step over that. This cell with the text work, that one is irrelevant to us as well, right? We don't care about work because the text is not gonna equal to what we want here. So let's step over this, step over that, step over that. Column counter increases again. And now we are on column number 3. That's what we should be up. Column number 3, which makes sense, right? We're right here. And so if I step over this, you guys can see that cell.text is equal to salary. Fantastic. So if it's equal to salary, then what do? We increase, we store the column index. Column index now, rather than being -1, is going to be the column that we want, which is number 3. And you guys see the beauty of this, right? Because if this salary column moved over to here, number 2, or we added another column and we put salary in there, then it would still not matter. This logic will still work because we would still go through the row, cell by cell by cell by cell, storing the column index. And then based on that, we would dynamically figure out where we need to go. That's why this logic is so cool. Anyway, so we step through that. Cell.text, it's not going to equal our desired value because we're right here. So we're going to step over this and move through. This loop is finished. We only had 3 cells in that row, and now we move on to the next one. We increase the counter, so from 0, we increase it to 1. And now we are at tr is equal to 1, which is here. Tr equal to 1, which is this one, right? So let's step through that. We're looking at this guy. And same thing is going to happen here. Now we're going to step through cell by cell by cell. And if the text matches this guy, then we're going to process it. So let's go through because it will match on this first iteration for every cell in all our cell rows. If the cell matches the column header, which it won't, because that will only happen one time, only for the column headers. Now we're checking if it has our desired value, which is software development engineer and test, which it does. And so now what we're trying to get to is this right here, right? So let me actually, we're here. Let's get to there. So we want the body, we want tr2, and after tr2, we want table data, right? But which table data do we want? Number 3, right? This guy. And this number 3 corresponds to this column right here, the salary column. That's why it's number 3. All of these TDs in here are going to be 3s. 3, 3, 3. And so what we do here is we create this cool string that's going to allow us. So check it out. We want this guy, right? So it's going to allow us to create this dynamic string using the same exact XPath expression, but instead our table row, we're going to replace with the table row count plus 1. Because remember, in C#, our collection starts at 0. However, in XPath, our table collection starts at 1. This is 1, this is 2. But right now we're at TR1. So we need to make it 2 so that it's equivalent to this value. And then we need to go one child below into the table data and make it number 3, which is just going to be the column index that we were tracking right here. Whenever we got the salary value, we also got the column index. We stored it. It's index number 3. And so now we're using it to dynamically generate this salary locator. And so when I step over it, check it out, our salary locator matches the exact expression that we have right here. You guys see how awesome that is? So we were dynamically able to get this column and this row, and based on that, right, this intersection. So this column and this row gets us this intersection. Let me see if I can actually represent that with some XPath. So to visually convey this, just so you guys understand, we got our table rows, but we want table row 2, And then we want so this is what we want right here, guys. This matching with this. And you guys see how it intersects to 150,000? That's exactly what we have achieved with this algorithm here. So we get our salary locator, and that will allow us to get our driver.find by element salary element. So I'm going to step in, and so now we have our salary element. Let me open it up for you guys just so you can see the beauty. And now you can see the text right here is 150,000. And that is how much a software development engineering test makes. And that's exactly correct, as you guys see. And then you can obviously use console.writeLine to write that statement out. And we have solved our problem. How awesome was that? And then basically it's going to increment the column counter and then run through the rest of the loops. But all of those are irrelevant. And that solves a problem. And I can probably wrap this in a function for you guys to make it even better. So let me just actually finish running through it so that it closes all the browsers and cleans up the drivers and so on. Excellent. So the other really cool thing about it, right, is if I wrap this mechanism in a function, is that all I have to do is change this. So if I'm looking rather for salary, I'm looking what kind of work does software development engineering test do? I just change this column, this value right here. But what if I want the salary of a quality assurance engineer? Then I just change this value right here. And the algorithm is actually going to be exactly the same, but it's just going to come out with a different result. Now, how freaking sweet is that, guys? All right. So now that we have figured out that problem, the only other thing that I wanted to share with you guys was, what are you going to do if you need to identify a HTML table with no ID? Just like this example here. That table there. You guys see how it has no ID? And this one does, and makes it really tough to identify, right? Well, not really. You just have to use one of our locators called by tag name. And you can just pass in the tag that you want, which in our case, it's a table, right? You guys see that right here? Its tag is a table. So you just have to pass that in. And then that's going to return to us a list of web elements, right? So for example, if we come over to FirePath here, and then rather than doing all that, I'm just going to do table, enter. You guys see how it highlights two tables? So that means that we're going to get a collection returned of two objects into our list of web elements. So let me just uncomment this portion. I'm going to comment this out. And then let me run it up to this point. And then we'll take a look at that list of tables. All right, so we're over here. Let me step over this. And now hover over this. You guys see that my tables.count is 2. And then if we want to use a certain table, then we just have to pick it using the standard index. See, we can either go with 0 or 1. And then you can just pick the table that you need. So in this case, it would be 1 because it's the second table, and we would work with that. And in this case, there really is no other way to differentiate the tables because they are exactly the same. They do have these unique titles above them, so you could possibly even use that to help you differentiate. But if those were the same, the only way to identify the difference between them would be the index. And so it's just like with any other tool, right? If two objects are exactly the same and there is no other way to identify them, you have to use the index. And it really sucks, but that's what you have to do. And you just have to hope that the tables don't switch orders, or for example, that a third table is not added and then these are shifted around and then the index changes. Usually that does not happen, but just bear in mind that using an index should be like a last resort for you guys. And if there is a better way to identify the object, then you should use it. But with all of that said, that about wraps it up for us with HTML tables. We completely crushed this section by tackling all of the possible aspects of these HTML tables, how to identify everything. We even learned how to uniquely identify a row and a column intersection and get the value of that intersection and utilize that value for whatever needs we may have. So there is one more locator that we need to talk about that is available in Selenium WebDriver, and that is called DOM, which is short for Document Object Model. And basically, it uses the structure of the page to locate elements. You guys can find a lot more online just by searching how to use Document Object Model in Selenium WebDriver, but it's not a good method of locating elements on a page. In fact, I don't even want to teach it to you guys because it's a waste of time. You almost never have to use this method. In fact, I have never come across a time where I've needed to use it. Therefore, you probably don't need to know it. As always, I like to focus on those things, right? The 20% of the learning that's going to get you 80% of the results. And this part, the DOM, is just not part of those 20%. In fact, it's not even part of the 5%. It's just knowledge that you may need one day for a very small situation that may come up one time in your life. Therefore, it's nice that you guys know about it. However, don't waste your time learning it unless it's extremely critical for you. But I believe that 99% of you will be able to get by with everything that I taught you here without needing to utilize the document object model. Ladies and gents, we are pretty much done with our advanced guide to locating web elements. You guys are probably now masters of this craft and can do anything at any time to locate an element. You guys learned some HTML, you learned a crap ton of XPath expressions, and now you guys know how to identify any element with any tool anytime, right? You can basically identify any element using the Firebug plugin and FirePath that I showed you guys to sit and analyze the page. And utilizing that, you can just simply pass that into your Selenium WebDriver files and then be able to run the code. Again, you can always download everything that we learned here at github.com/nadvolod/light pump framework tutorial. That's where the code is located. Just go ahead and pull it down and you can simply follow along. The best thing that I could recommend for you guys is to try to recreate this all on your own by following the videos. There is nothing better than watching a course, learning along, making your own mistakes, and trying to fix them along the way. That is the best way to learn, and it's really awesome. There are also other resources that are available for you guys, which is the W3 Schools for HTML and W3 Schools for XPath as well, if you guys need any more information. But I believe that you guys should have sufficient amount of knowledge in your head by now after everything that we have finally covered. And basically, you guys learned a bunch of these locators right here. The ID, the class, the name, the link, the partial link text, CSS selectors, XPath, and you just got a tiny introduction into DOM. You guys learned that the ID is the best way to identify elements because it's always unique. So if you can ask your developers to provide you with IDs so that your application is more testable and can get to production faster, that would be phenomenal. If not, you can utilize other ways like XPath to be able to locate your elements, and that's why we spend so much time on XPath so that you guys can be completely amazing at it. So with all that said, I wanted to say thank you all for tuning in. It has been fantastic teaching you guys the advanced techniques to locating web elements in Selenium WebDriver with C#. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm always here to help out. Thanks and have an awesome day.